that a member of this House could threaten a sitting, a competent, and the legally elected deputy speaker, a second deputy speaker of the House. I find it atrocious. It is in bad taste. Who is he appealing to? They have no say in whether an ally is made in this House or not. No one, not even with respect to the Speaker. The Speaker has absolutely...
Items, approximately 22 selected items. You will need to go to the Ministry of Trade and Industry and to see a committee that will be constituted by the minister before a permit will be given to you. This, I think, is a dangerous practice. It has happened before in this country. And you recall that in 1967, a commission of inquiry was established. Justice Olenu's committee was established. And that committee was to identify the corruption and malpractices relating to import licenses. The report was clear that that practice is outmoded and it cannot be continued because people use it for the purposes of rent seeking. This government is taking us back to 1967, once again, President Akufo-Addo. I'm worried that a time will come, if you are not an MPP member, you will not even get a license to import something to this economy. That is unacceptable. Ghana is a member of the World Trade Organization. This practice, the World Trade Organization frowns upon it, and it's a clear violation of the practices of world trade and international trade, and it should not happen. We are urging His Excellency the President to have a rethink, because this is not a policy that we should encourage, and they have to withdraw it. In fact, we in the NDC will criticize it and we'll do whatever it takes. But the only problem we have is that the Constitution places a limitation on us because it is an ally, and it will mean that it can be laid without us having any major inputs.
If I heard the member who moved the quorum, Honorable Agaga, we have 28 here and 13 on the majority side. 28 members on the minority side and 30 members on the majority side. And we are going ahead to lay an instrument of such magnitude with this courage. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honorable himself, sensing the collective wisdom of the House, indicated that we should not lay the instrument until the two sides of the leadership or have consulted and briefing. Mr. Speaker, have you received that briefing? Has the Speaker told you that the leadership have informed him that this is their position on it? Mr. Speaker, it will be a very great disservice if the Right Honorable Speaker comes on Monday to be told that the decision or indication that he gave in his absence, the Speaker, it was turned answered down by you. We are going to lay an instrument to control and restrict import, which will go against the WTO conventions, making a passionate appeal to the colleague leadership and to your good self that we must not ambush the Speaker in this way. He has utmost trust in you and has given the seat to you. We must not treat him this way. I end my case, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. So in Parliament, there was a heated argument over whether this should be put in and for it to mature at the due date as required by law, or it should not. So let me begin with, again, Kessel, I said Kessel, Ricketts Hagan. Yes. How did it end? How did it end?
Well, it ended by not allowing the minister to actually lay, because we had some concerns, and we had discussed those concerns with him. But he was still insistent that he needed to lay that because he was trying to beat this 21 days. You see, But the issue for me was not even about whether we had a quorum or not. The issue was that what he was trying to lay was problematic. And the timing was not right. All of us, we've been talking about this for years, that we need to be able to produce some of the things or most of the things we produce and not be bringing them from outside. It's making it difficult for local producers to be able to.
So why don't you support him to lay it, and then after 21 days this has become law, and we use it to stop all of this importation of all of this yama.
Like that. We don't have the capacity. The things he had listed here, we don't actually have the capacity at the moment to produce these things for us to be self-sufficient.
Okay, I understand we have a little issue with your microphone, so okay. I will come back to you. Before I get to Akomia, I'd like to bring in Dr. Thierry Champong. But gentlemen, I want you to listen to this. It's important. About 11 months ago, I interviewed, we decided to do a program about, as it were, made in Ghana. And we spoke to those in charge of production, manufacturing sector, and so on and so forth. And we learnt, I learnt very shockingly this. Listen to this.
As we speak now, we are not producing 1% of the total imports into the country. If you look at EU data,
1%.
We are not producing 1% of the total imports into the country. Yes. If you look at EU data, you see that for the past years, Ghana has been the leading importer of chicken from EU. And in 2021, about 227,903 metric tons of chicken were imported from EU alone in 2021. The data is there. Now, because it's alarming, US and Brazil are also contesting at the top that they are the highest exporter of chicken into the country. So, considering this fact, if EU, which is the third position, which is at the third position, brought 227,903 metric tons, and assuming the three countries brought the same figure, it gives you about 683,709 metric tons in 2021 alone. And we are not producing 1% of that figure. So, it means that, and it's so cheap that there's no way the local market can compete with them. Okay, let's go to US. Poultry has impacted US economy from the year, from 2012, it was $265 billion. 2014, it went up to $441 billion. 2016 was $643. And 2018, it was $739 billion. And out of that, you'll see that broiler production, they call it chicken. Chicken took about, I would say broiler. Broiler took about 75% of the total economic impact. Layer was about 6%, and turkey 18%. Now, it means that poultry is all about the broiler production. And this is where the EU and the Western world have taken over all the market by dumping their chicken on us at a very cheap price. My concern is that when you travel to any of the Western world, chicken is not as cheap as it is sold here when they bring it here. So I ask myself, what is the reason for that? That you've bought it, you've shipped it, you've paid duties on it, added your margin, and it's still very cheap, even from the country that you brought it. So it is very disturbing, and it has affected the poultry so much so that it has pushed all the poultry farmers to produce eggs. And now the challenging is seen all over. Poultry farmers in the country, about 80% are not in operation as we speak now.
Right. So 11 months ago, I engaged Mr. Jay here, who is an industry player and who is actually the head of the association. 1%. We don't produce 1% of the poultry we consume. What a shame. 80% of poultry farmers, they've gone out of business. They are now doing egg. So when we begin this way, that we are going to stop the importation, are we being realistic?
We are not, obviously. As you can see, 1%. How can you be realistic? You are not producing what you are banning. So the starting point for me would have been to incentivize those who produce these things, give them the necessary stimulus package and the support for them to be able to start producing these things and also to be competitive. And then you have some kind of a scaling down of stopping this importation while you basically increase the domestic, the domestic production. But if you don't do that, and you wake up one morning, a few weeks to Christmas, and you want to give a people a miserable Christmas by coming and saying that, look, we are banning these things because we want to be able to produce. What do you know it doesn't exist? One of the funny things that I even see...
So there's going to be a restriction on the importation,
yes,
not a ban.
Well, that is even the problematic. If we are serious as a country and we want to stop these things, then as we scale up domestically, then we put a total ban and we'll continue to scale up. But if you now give in to this corruption window of basically getting an import permit to be able to bring these things in, who are those going to get those import permits and those who are not going to get it? This is where the problem is. And the minister has so much powers.
If you are going to need to import these selected strategic products, the permit that you need to apply for, you state your business name, your tax identification number, your headquarters address, your PO box, your telephone number, fax number, electronic email,
sounds
website.
Like something in the 60s.
What's wrong with that? Advance notification of plan to import selected strategic product. Product to be imported, you name it. Quantity to be imported in metric tons. Estimated value to be imported. Name and source of the supply. Location of source of supply. The grade of selected strategic product to be imported, if any. Then ownership and location of the business. You must state the name and the nationality of the owners, names of the directors and partners. Oh, interesting. Names and directors of the partners of the company that's going to... Why do you want to know them? Does that feed into why they are suspecting you want to give it to party people? Names of the directors of the partners, shareholders, percentage of owners, exact location of the business, number of employees, contact person, and so on. Why do you need this? You hold on, Nana Kumia. Why do you need all of this in those who will make the importation?
Samson, we agree with the principle, I'm sure. That all of us agree that we've become an import-dependent economy. And that is not the way to deliver prosperity to Ghanaians. And to correct that, we need to be producing a lot of these things that we import. When you import, you are creating jobs in other countries. When you produce in your country, you are creating jobs inside your country. Last year, 2022, the value of imports alone was $11.9 billion. So we need to take some corrective action. What is happening now is that the minister has proposed some corrective action. He's saying that we need to restrict the importation of about 23 items. There's one item there that I'm a little unsure about, sugar, because as far as I know, we don't have any productive capacity.
Okay, again, let's run through the items. Rice, guts, bladders and stomach of animals, poultry, animal and vegetable oil, margarine, fruit juices, soft drink, mineral water, noodles and pasta, ceramic tiles, corrugated paper and paper board, mosquito coil and insecticide, soaps and detergents, motor cars, iron and steel, cement, polymers, plastic and plastic products, fish, sugar, clothing and apparel, biscuits, canned tomatoes, 22.
Yes. So the level of importation alone, over 11 billion, shows us that there's a huge domestic local market, which we are not meeting. The minister is proposing that we, as part of the measures to meet this big domestic market, we need to restrict the importation that is coming in. That is the principle. The minister needs to let us know how much productive capacity that we have on each of these 22 or 23 items. Rice, what is the demand? What is our productive capacity? What will be the effect of restriction on imports, on price? Poultry, what is it? Yamadia, stomach things. What is the capacity as against the demand? Can we meet it? Because if we don't meet it, prices will go up and people will suffer. The minister needs to convince stakeholders that we can limit these imports. Our productive capacity can meet the gap that will be filled, and it will create jobs and so on. And when I say stakeholders, Parliament is a key stakeholder because these measures have to go through Parliament. There may be difficulties with aspects of the minister's proposal. Some say the powers granted to the committee that can decide what should be imported and the quantities to be imported, those powers are too much. And the minister is at the center of it. And when you are refused the importation, you have to appeal to the minister who's at the center of this committee. And so, but those are things that can be refined. Unfortunately, the mode of an LI, which is a legislative instrument, does not seem to give Parliament the chance to do amendments.
That's right.
Yes. And so, and if you disagree with aspects of the LI, you need a 2/3 majority to say that no, we disagree, and then the LI will go. The NDC doesn't have a 2/3 majority. So essentially what they are saying is that we don't get a chance to refine these conditions and that the minister, the list of items, the modus operandi and all. We don't have a chance. And so we wouldn't even allow it to be laid. And so there's all this confusion.
So normally the approach is the institution that is sponsoring the LI. They deal with that institution, give all their inputs, and then they bring an LI that is favorable to everybody. Then it goes in for the 21
to everybody.
days.
So it seems, so what you've done is go around this problem of LI. But if it's an act, then when it comes to Parliament, there will be public hearings, there will be 3-4 stages. First reading, second reading, third reading, and all of that. So it gives Parliament a chance to modify it. With the LI, it doesn't give Parliament a chance. The rules say you lay it, if you disagree, vote by 2/3. You don't have 2/3. So that is the problem. And they've tried to go around it by having what you call the pre-something conference, pre-laying conference.
Yeah.
At the pre-laying conference, the minister would justify the issues presented in the LI, issues about capacity, issues about pricing, issues about the restriction and all of that. You obviously haven't gotten that opportunity. We should be able to go back. For me, personally, I believe that because it's so close to Christmas, even if we get this done, it will be after, because 21 days would take us through December anyway. Yeah. But we should go back, Stakeholders who believe they haven't been consulted and they have an input, let's engage them, including Parliament, including the minister gives the impression that there has been extensive consultation. They've consulted traders, they've consulted the manufacturers, they've consulted customs people, everybody. But then people are coming out to say, we don't know about it, we disagree, particularly the traders in the form of GUTA, the Ghana Union of Trade. The manufacturers, I'm sure, are quite happy because it presents opportunity for them to operate 24 hours. But the traders believe that they may be shortchanged and all their business can be affected if there is no local capacity and all of that. Let's engage everybody else. And some of these things, the engagement should be public. So that if GUTA is being engaged, it should be, the ministry should pay for some coverage by Joy FM or something. So we can see the engagement that is going on and
they have a concern about the committee that is to be set up, which is the Selected Strategic Product Import Permit Committee. This is the representation of the committee. Who constitutes the committee? The Ministry of Trade and Industry. You must be somebody, a representative from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, not below the rank of a deputy minister as chairperson, nominated by the minister. So a deputy minister will chair it. A representative of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, not below the rank of a director, nominated by the minister responsible for food and agriculture. Then 3, a representative of the Ministry of Finance, not below the rank of a director, nominated by the minister responsible for finance. 4, a representative of the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations, not below the rank of a director, nominated by the minister responsible for employment and labor relations. A representative of the Ministry of Interior, also not below the rank of a director. A representative of the Bank of Ghana, not below the rank of a director. The governor will nominate that person. A representative of the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, not below the rank of a director. So it's a place where you have directors. The representative of the Food and Drugs Authority, also of a director status. A representative of the Ghana International Trade Commission, also not below the rank of a director. The representative of the Association of Ghana Industries. And finally, a representative of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
The traders are not there?
The minister shall appoint the members of the Import Permit Committee.
Okay. So there have been an issue raised with the committee that if you are not careful, you are just going to create an opportunity for the committee members to enrich themselves, and that they would engage in crony capitalism where you have to know people there. So instead of looking at the issues objectively, they will look at it on who you know basis, lobbying, and all of that. These are genuine fears. We've had instances in this country where import regimes were set up and they became an avenue for rent seeking. Yes. So it's genuine, but we need to engage to see how we can improve it. Because we agreed that the level of importation into this country, and the gentleman that you spoke to earlier was even talking about dumping. Dumping is the killer. It kills your country. You go and buy this pen that I'm holding for $1 in China, where it is produced. I'm just saying China. I don't know where's this pen produced. So $1 in China. Then you come and sell it at 50 cents in Ghana. After you've packaged it, shipped it from China or wherever, paid duty, added your margin, you are selling it at 50 cents. When it's selling $1 in China. So clearly what it means is that it is being subsidized. And that is what they call dumping. And so it is to prevent somebody from setting up a pen manufacturing company in this country. Because you cannot compete. Because the Chinese government is subsidizing the Chinese company and they are selling it at 50 cents in Ghana when they are selling it at $1 in China. So they are subsidized. And that will kill, nobody will set up a pen factory. You know, they will all import pens from China. And these things cannot continue. So the principle is there. The way that it has been proposed, if there's a problem, let's look at it. Let's not poo-poo it. And like I said, you need to be able to show that the electricity is available if companies are going to ramp up production to meet this 11 billion import bill in all these 22 items. You need to show that electricity is available. You need to show that credit is available. You need to show that, look, a simple thing like traffic congestion can create 24-hour economy. There was one company that produces Blue Skies. They were having major problems initially because traffic where they are to the airport, and you must have this cold chain. So the traffic, so the minister at that time, my senior brother Kwame Nabatels, gave them police escorts so that when their vans are coming from the factory to the airport, they don't spend 3 hours in traffic. And that changed dramatically their cost of operation. So, these things, and these are the things that create 24-hour economy, not their fiat.
Right. Let me go to. Let's
look at it. Let the minister take it easy, engage Parliament, go back, because this thing, the impact, the potential impact on Ghanaian industry and the Ghana is so huge that if there's a little problem about consultation, let's take our time, go back, engage everybody else again, because we are on the same side on this. I mean, no political party or no organization is happy that we are such an import-dependent economy. And if this 11.9 billion that we imported last year, if even we can produce about 6-7 billion of it, look at the impact on jobs and our GDP. So let's not throw the baby away with the bathwater.
Okay.
Because we all agree that this can be a game changer. We've all cried about it. Every party manifesto had talked about capturing the heights of the economy. Every party manifesto. This we know would help. There are difficulties with the committee. There are difficulties. The assurances have not been total. Let's go back and
right.
So we can move on this.
So Nana, my final question to you is: you heard the national chairman of the Ghana National Association of Poultry Farmers. That is Mr. Victor Opongweje, and he said that about 80% of poultry farmers in Ghana are not in operation. They have turned to looking to eggs. And we don't produce 1% of the poultry that we consume. Don't you think it's problematic to approach this the way the ministry is going?
It will be problematic if the ministry has no plans. I mean, why is it that we are producing only 2% of poultry demand? Maybe there are issues with feed. Maybe there are issues with veterinary services. Maybe there are issues with processing. Maybe there are issues with the cold storage. Papaya alone would take about 300,000 birds a month. Why is it not taking it from the local people? Maybe there are issues with weight. The ministry has to go down to the poultry level, see how we can solve the problem of feed, the problem of packaging, the cold storage, the problem of weight, the problem of veterinary. The ministry needs to give that assurance. But this interview was about 2 years ago.
No, that's 11 months ago.
11 months ago,
yeah.
And if you spoke to him today and he still says that they haven't been engaged in meeting the constraints, then of course there's a problem.
So,
but I
a
imagine
major part of his concern was the cheapness of the import.
The dumping. Now, clearly, if we can demonstrate that a pound of chicken is selling for €1 in Europe and is selling for 40, when from Euro, what do you come to? Cents?
Yes, sir.
Cents. It's selling for 40 cents in Ghana. It means it is being dumped. The Ghanaian government, the Ghanaian people are being cheated. And so that one, you need a quick corrective measure to impose tariffs, to raise the price to at least above what is being sold in Europe. But to do that, you also need to address your local capacity issues.
Interestingly, questions of local capacity, the feeding program, school feeding program, the poultry farmers were happy that they were providing the policy of an egg
Created a demand for
so. There was a demand. Then
You
suddenly,
will let them operate 24 hours.
then suddenly, some, government people felt that it was good to give a contract to somebody to go and bring some canned thing from China.
Can't what?
And they wrote on it either freeze SHS or something. It was funny.
To
and they lost
substitute
their business.
for the eggs.
Exactly.
Oh, but that's a national issue.
It was funny.
That should be corrected. If what you are saying is true, that's a
That
national
was
issue.
criminal, in fact.
I don't know if what you are saying is true.
Oh, they
Who was giving the contract?
They did press conferences.
Really?
They said their business was collapsing.
Did you hear
because
about
of
it in Parliament?
that policy?
You heard about it?
Yeah, but-
And you did nothing?
No. You said
The things that they should do, they don't do it.
Apparently,
Yes.
apparently,
Why
yes.
are you looking to that hear about it?
apparently, it was just one
public
man, one
information.
person who had been given the opportunity to bring this import.
I don't
And it collapsed their one egg a day.
That a product, an economy that is being participated in by thousands of Ghanaian poultry farmers can be wiped off in favor of one person. Are you sure?
And there was an
Are you
injunction.
sure?
There was an injunction
And Parliament didn't do anything about
to
it.
those
We are talking
to those
about
who
information that
those who
was-
do
The opposition didn't do anything about it.
those who cook for their schools. They were supposed to rely on the local economy, right there, the community,
Yes. Sure.
for their supplies.
Yes.
Yes. Let's hear you.
Yeah, can I? My mic went off when
You destroyed it.
and I think Nana himself hit it right on the nail. In fact, I think that's the only thing I probably will agree with you this morning.
Yeah, because you've closed your mind. to
And
other things.
it's when the minister came with all this, precisely the same questions we were asking him. That look, how much work have you done on all these things that you are going to you want to ban? What data do you have in terms of how much of this are we producing here and how much of this is coming from outside? And where is the capacity? If we should, close the doors in bringing these things in, how are we going to survive in terms of prices and all that? Because these things are going to lead into, and rightly, is this a right policy with about a month to Christmas? You're going to create a lot of problems. So, Minister, let's take our time, go through this, provide us a data on where we stand on all this, so that we can fashion our proper ally, that will be scaling up local production and be shutting the door. There are issues about incentives that we have talked about here. There are subsidies that are being given to other markets for people to bring things here. What can we do, even if we shall allow certain things to come in? What can you do to be able to compete? If they get these subsidies and are able to sell to us here at those ridiculous prices, they are presumably still making profit.
Yeah. So what would be your alternative?
So
the question
how
of
do they do
dumping. You impose taxes, heftier taxes, so they can bring them in.
First and foremost, if you are producing enough for the domestic market, then that's when you are going to be able to shut these people out. It's not about imposing higher taxes, and they're always going to find a way to do these things. You see, giving a room in a policy for certain things to operate basically leads to corruption. And that's exactly what we are trying to do here at the moment, where you have this. I am totally opposed to this permit that is being given, and the minister becomes a super minister in charge of all this. If he doesn't give it to you and you want to appeal, you have to come back to him. Look at the structure of the committee that has been set up. And doesn't it surprise you that doesn't include Guta? Guta, the principal stakeholder.
No, they are not represented.
In this.
It's the manufacturers.
What we're talking about,
That's
they are the ones.
They have to be
traders.
there, but they are not
Yes.
the principal stakeholders.
Well,
they trade.
Yeah, they
so
trade.
if the
So we are
product
talking
is
about
available,
doing
we are talking about trading matters here. You said
they trade. If the product is made available, they don't care where it is coming from. Once they have it,
let me make your point. I
so
don't think what you're saying will fly.
I'm making my point.
So basically, even to an extent, probably you will have to invite the AGI. If you want to make this a broad-based thing, because then you have the manufacturers, you have the traders in. Because at the end of the day, you don't even want the kind of
You think they should come in the form of an act where it will generate broader consultation and participation?
Well, it should come in a form of practical practical, sensible policy.
I'm saying because it's coming the airline.
But the AGI, you mentioned the AGI. The AGI is a member.
Or the AGI is there.
Yes.
But the Guta is not
Ghana
there. I don't think you
Association of
mentioned
Industries.
Guta is not there.
There's a Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. No Guta is there.
I remember.
Guta is not there.
I remember specifically when having a meeting with a minister mentioning Guta, but I won't go into.
So you had meetings with the minister on this?
Yes. We were just on the corridor when he was trying to.
I thought you.
Yeah, there was earlier meetings with leadership, but when he was coming to lay this, we called him.
Do you think if it comes from an act, and it would ensure
well, then
broader
we'll have an opportunity.
The LI is being passed on the strength of an act, a 1995 Import Act.
Which says what?
That's what gives the minister the power to make LIs, to regulate imports.
So can we amend the act to include many of these things? Because I'm looking at a situation where the consultation will be broader, the stakeholder participation will be enhanced. Because the problem now is that it seems stakeholder participation has not been broad enough. There's lack of information. They are claiming there's lack of information. In fact, I heard one person.
So you can do so without necessarily.
I heard one person. Beverages industry was saying this is wicked.
At the end of the day,
soft drinks.
If you let me have my time.
All right.
At the end of the day,
having a discussion.
Okay. All right. I will just make my point without going back into what saying. You know, at the end of the day, all these things that we are talking about makes this LI a premature. That the timing is not actually good for this. We don't know. We agree the principle, everything. But it has to be done in a way that will be sustainable. But at the moment as it is, if we present this in 21 days, since it's an LI, I mean, we can look at this act thing you are talking about. Since it's an LI, we cannot have the input that really needs to go into this for this to be sustainable. And the corruption, the endemic corruption that will come out of this, nobody will be able to control it. It's not a matter of KT Hammond or NPP being in government. If this thing is put out there for any government in the future, for any minister who will get this powers to be able to do the things that we are proposing here, then that will become a challenge. Nana, this is an opportunity that leads straight into 24-hour economy. Because for us to be able to move from 1% of poultry,
so you agree it is not new
to where we should get to.
It's not new.
Forget about its newness and all that. We want you on board. We want Baumia on board to understand exactly what this whole thing is
there.
Let me go to.
It's already doing things that enhance 24 hours.
Can I finish on this, please? All these things that we have here, straight away, you see the opportunity of why we need to increase manufacturing or producing of these things. These are import substitution. So all the things that we have here, if we are producing them here in Ghana, we are going to increase working hours. We will have more factories or whatever they produce this thing. We will have more people working. This is what we're looking at.
Because
Dr. Tia Champong, Dr. Tia Champong,
laws.
Right.
To cure this.
There are people who say, as for the politicians, they have their genuine fears because they know that a majority of the big importers are politicians, so to speak, and that there is the potential, and that's the NDC has not shied away from that there's a potential that such a committee will favor a particular regime because these are the people who will also fund the party in elections and so on and so forth. What should we be looking at in this discussion? This, which I say, is a discussion or a policy we should have had many decades ago and not today.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm following the conversation keenly. I mean, first off, for me, I don't support a ban. I think it actually would defeat the purpose or the intent of that policy. I think that there are better tools that one can actually use if you want to support your local industry to meet that demand.
So like I corrected Ricketts Hagan, it's restriction, not a ban. So that the ministers' committee will determine who gets license, permit to bring in how many of those products?
Yeah, but in essence, the restriction is still going to work out as though it was a ban. So, I mean, it's a question of semantics. But
yeah, it's correct to an extent, because if you went ahead without the permit, you could go to jail for 1 year, you pay fines of so much.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the committee itself, the composition and all of that, for me, is problematic, right? We have had instances in our own industrial economic history. You can go back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, where we've attempted things like this in the past. And what actually ended up happening was having more corruption, as others have said, more rent seeking, and people ultimately lining their pockets, which ends up defeating the purpose of the policy. So we need to go back. Again, the policy or this restriction, if you attempt to go by that, even some of the protocols that we've signed, you know, with the WTO, even the IMF and all of that, you know, it could possibly contravene some of those, you know, international conditions and protocols that we've signed up to. The fundamental thing or the root cause is, why is it that our local companies are not able to produce to meet that demand? And that's where I think we've got to, again, address our minds to. So if you put in a restriction or a ban and you don't address the supply side constraint and all of that, you actually end up driving more inflation. It's actually going to be inflationary because people still want those things, and it ends up defeating the whole purpose. So let me take you quickly to paragraph 395 of the 2024 budget. And this is where the government talks about its medium-term growth strategy and what it wants to do to sort of revert some of these things. It says that the growth strategy seeks to support the implementation of interventions that, one, increase our capacity to produce, deepen value chain arrangements, facilitate and modernize storage, and increase the shelf life of jobs, and then it leads to jobs, food security and resilience, etc. But I just want to highlight one of the first points there, which is really a question of how do you increase the capacity to produce? You get my point? To the point that it is, one, competitive, and you are able to then meet a part of that demand. You were giving the example of poultry. There's a table in the budget again, table 29, which shows the priority commodities and targets that the government has for this. If you take poultry, the statistic that you've got in there, I think is the first line in that table, we are only meeting 5% of the national demand, right? So in other words, 95% is still coming in by way of imports. And by 2023, 2024, the expectation is that you will move this thing up to about 20% of the demand. So if you even impose a restriction and your local people are still, according to the government's own projections, only going to do about 20% of, you know, the demand, then where is that extra 80 going to come from? You are still going to end up actually causing a much worse or deeper problem than you're trying to correct. The same thing with tomato. You can see again in that table. In tomato 2022, the national demand was about 1.3 million tons. Local production is 468,000, right? Tons. So again, you are meeting only about 40% of that market. So if you try to impose these restrictions, while you don't fundamentally address the issue of the capacity to produce, that many of our firms are not able to compete. One, the dumping factor is there, but also you have internal factors that are constraining them. So you've got issue of killer taxes, you've got issue of high cost. They go to the bank, they have to borrow, and you're talking 35% plus interest rates. Whereas the person in Europe or some other place is getting this from the bank at 2%, 5%, even 10%. There's no way that your local industry will be able to compete on that basis. So what I think that we've got to do, for me, is to go back and perhaps if you even want to restrict it, you have to face it over a certain period. Number two, we have to address the issue of this local capacity and then the availability of substitutes, right, for people to change or to have from one form or the other. If you take poultry is like the cheapest protein for many households in Ghana. It's become almost like core to their livelihoods and all of that. So you impose a restriction, the local market cannot meet it because even by your own estimate, they're only going to be able to do about 25% of that.
Right.
You end up having to drive up inflation. Look at the inflation basket. A bigger chunk of it is coming by way of food inflation. And that, again, is something that, in my view, we cannot address this policy with it in a rather sort of...
There's an economist who suggests that we could, to avoid the dumping situation that we have raised also, and how, because dumping means these goods are so cheap and we all run to them instead of the local produce, the government can impose heavy taxes on these imports and use the revenue directly to support local producers.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the trade policy tools that is available under even, the WTO protocols that often you use tax policy tools so you can hike up or increase the tariffs at the ports, or you can even use other what we call non-trade barriers. And the Europeans actually use this a lot against us if you want to even export things like mangoes and things where they say your banana or mango is not a particular size, it's not this and it's not that, and therefore you cannot bring it into the market. So he's very right on that. But that is only, in my view, a temporary measure. The more sustainable medium to long-term measure comes back to what you have to do to increase the local capacity to produce. So if your poultry farmers cannot get feed, if your poultry farmers don't have substitute for maize or the bran, and they still have to, again, spend millions of dollars or cedis to still import these things in, and they have to pay extraordinarily high cost on those things, then it doesn't matter the restrictions that you impose. You're still going to have an issue where it's actually going to end up, again, driving inflation. And my worry is the committee, just a quick one to land. On the committee, we've seen this in the past. There's a potential for catalyzation, there's a potential for monopolies to be created, and this ultimately creates more inefficiencies, and we end up being the worst for it as a country. So the policy needs a real...
Let me go to John Awuni, and he's Executive Chairman, Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, FABAG. So we understand you are not excited as this. The consultation we are told about extensive. Were you not involved? Why are you not excited that there will be opportunity for local production rather than importation? These days, the sort of soft drinks, juices you see on the market from abroad, some of them are responsible for our bad health. Hello, John. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to my senior brothers in the studio. I want to begin by saying that I would have really been very excited as an expert in the industry if I clearly knew that Ghana has the capacity to produce the products they are seeking to restrict. If I knew that Ghana had already prepared on the ground, so to say, we have food stocks in our buffer zones, rice, chicken, and all the like, that we can direct those who are trading in those goods to go there and then buy. I would have really been very excited because this is our country. And no country can really continue to develop on relying on foreign goods. But this is not the case, Samson. Over 20 years as a consultant, researcher, direct business person in the field, I don't see us being prepared for this. What I see clearly, and the minister displayed that on the floor of Parliament yesterday in his statement. The Honorable Katie Hammond, standing up to make a presentation in Parliament, talked about the fact that he did economics at A level or what level, and then he got a score of 38 over 40, and yet he will not do presentations like the way the minority leader does. Then he went further to say, and that's what he really hit me, and which Ghanaians should really pay attention to. That look, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm a British trained lawyer, so when it comes to law, don't get there. This is somebody seeking to promote Ghanaian products, yet he's not even confident that, by his statement, that Ghanaian lawyers are better than British or equal to British. He said, if it comes to law, don't even get there. I'm a British trained lawyer. You're on your feet, trying to convince your fellow citizens to patronize locally produced goods, local lawyers, local doctors, local rice, local chicken, local fruit juice. Yet you cannot boast that you are a Ghanaian trained lawyer, but he said you are a British trained lawyer. Nobody should get there. So it tells me that the man himself talking about is not convicted about it. And I heard a minority talking about it, that in the 1967 Jesse Olunu report, what happened, and there was corruption about, and they're all rent-seeking. Fine, 1967, maybe some people were not yet born. As recent as the NDC era, it happens for chicken restrictions. And any importer that had to import chicken had to go and take quotas from the ministry. The players in the industry, they know what happens. They know what, so it is real. And the NDC, who, let me say, are the crocodiles in the water, they are coming out to tell you that it will create corruption. Why wouldn't the government listen? Why wouldn't they know? I see this phenomenon seeking to create pure monopoly or oligopoly. Samson, this is very wrong because you are dealing with a phenomenon at a time where Ghanaian poultry farmers are looking for day-old chickens to buy. If today Holland refuses to sell day-old chickens to Ghanaian farmers, if today Morocco refuses to sell day-old chickens to Ghanaian poultry farmers, the poultry industry would have died. Let the ministry or the minister present to Ghanaians the kind of mechanisms that he has set up for poultry, for rice, for tin tomatoes, and for sugar, largely the food products, that when this system is implemented as his ration, the Ghanaian consumer will not be affected. The issue of talking about dumping, I disagree so strongly, Samson. It's not about dumping. If your system is inefficient and you are producing your products at a very high cost, you don't call other people who are efficient their products as dumping. Why will cable metal cost twice of turkey cable, which is also equally good? Why will local chicken, 10 kilos, cost about 1,000 cedis compared to imported chicken that comes with a heavy tax as much as 65% and sometimes 100% taxes on them, cost at 360 cedis for 10 kilos? Why will a bag of rice landed cost at 400 cedis, at the retail end 700 cedis, 750 cedis? Cost at that much. Imported local rice. I was the president of Ghana Rice in the professional for almost 8 years. In the early 2000s. Nowhere in this country have I not been to. I am not speaking theory. I am speaking on the ground, and let anybody who also say he's well-versed put data aside, put documents aside. Let's go on the practical. Let's go and answer why IPO farmers are not doing well. Let's go and answer why Botanga farmers are not doing well. Dowenya, the Gong, and then Afife. Let's answer why. Let the minister on the floor of Parliament Answer why GATCO, when they came and set up their rice plant at Sogapope, myself and the late Emisata went and commissioned that project. Why did GATCO fail? Why did Finatrade fail in promoting local producers? I was handling that project as a Ghanaian and I was so passionate about it. Because I am not in the studio, but if I were in the studio, I'll present to you documents, signed documents with ICO, with Botanga, with Dowenya, where we advance monies to these farmers to produce, and afterwards they will sell those rice to the companies. After that, after they have produced, they say they will not sell the rice. They've sold it to other parties, and then they now return your money to you. The issue of the Ghanaian product is a complicated one. It's an attitudinal one. Even it has not extended to the issue of our labor front, that now we prefer to even employ Togolese boys for our POP, for our construction work through Ghanaians. The issue of rice production in this country has to do a lot with production constraints, Samson. The minister that he's seeking to promote locally produced rice, what brand of local produced rice is seeking to promote? What category? You have different rice produced in Aveime, different rice produced in Icon, different rice produced by as many farmers as we have. They are producing different varieties. How has he codified those varieties, standardized those varieties that can allow a commercial marketer to go and buy those products and then sell?
But ultimately, you agree that we need to move away from an import-driven economy. And so we must start from somewhere, correct?
If I were the Minister of Agri or Minister of Trade, where I will start with something, clearly, good question. Where I will start with will be, number one, I will make sure that I ensure that the local poultry producers produce efficiently. That a local bet of about 1 kilo or 1.2 kilo shouldn't cost 130 cedis, which you, Samson, and myself cannot afford on our table throughout the month. I will ensure that these products are produced at affordable cost, number one. Number two, I will make sure that I get these goods stored in a particular buffer stock at the warehouse. Huge quantities, Samson. Like, I wanted to implement that system this year. I would have started 2019, Samson.
As we understand, John, in Nigeria, how many millions of citizens? There was one Ghanaian, I brought him to this studio early in the year 2, Abraham Odum. He was used to bring a revolution to agriculture in terms of rice production in Nigeria, so that where they were importing 80-90% of rice, they came to a point of importing less than 10% or so, or was it 18% or 8% of rice. Nigeria. It took one Ghanaian and a deliberate policy using the Central Bank of Nigeria to bring about that kind of revolution. Oils and the rest of them.
You are right, Samson. You are right, Samson. That's what I was getting to. That if I were the Minister of Agri, over the years, I was part of the Honorable Kodesh Kwashiga system, and clearly we were able to achieve that 30-40% rice import reduction through some policies that we did. The school feeding program, government-sponsored institutions buying locally produced rice were part of the system that we instituted. Okay. But move forward. What I will have done, Samson, is that let me get these goods stored up in the buffer stock. Samson, me and you are like, we are from the village. The old lady in our village knows that fresh millet is not as good as old millet. Fresh corn is not as good as old corn. Fresh rice is not as good. So you cannot produce rice from the farm come February and bring it to the Ghanaian farmer, the Ghanaian consumer to consume, or millet. It is wrong. So technically, this food should have been stored like 2019, 2020. Cured. Then you now say that importers, those who are importing, those who are traders, let's come together. Let's say meeting. I'm having a meeting with you. I have have 1 million tons of locally produced rice or chicken in this warehouse. I want each and every one of you to commit to selling it. Every quarter or every month, file to me, Minister of Finance, Minister of Trade, Minister of Agri, your returns on the sales of locally produced rice. In return, this is what I will do. A company that is found not to support this for some couple of years after several warnings will be ruled out of the market.
All right.
But not to come out with such a system to seek to use law to direct the invisible hand of the market.
Can't you do this at the same time whilst you are stocking and then you begin the policy at the same time? It doesn't work?
Samson, you cannot do that because as you are saying, in 21 months' time, and 21 days' time, this has become law. No, clearly as it has become law, what then happens? It's a government that has not prepared on the ground. And what they are seeking now to do is going to push prices up.
All right.
You clearly have
were you not consulted?
Samson, the Food and Beverage Association is the biggest stakeholder in this, not even to talk about Buta when it comes to maybe some of the other products, but when it comes to food products, we are the people who deal with the economy. No, Buta are traders. Buta buy from the food and
were you consulted, John? And
distributed. I wasn't part of any meeting. I'm not aware. Even in the studio, as you are talking about, everybody's talking about include Buta. The major players that are in there have not been included. And in the past, due to my expertise in this industry, former ministers used to invite me to be part. In 2001, the Honorable Perishkashika called me. When it came to Honorable Kwesi Ahoy, he invited me. Akumbo, he invited. So I've been part of because of my expertise.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. John, thank you very much for your insights. And there's a professor in the United States who says the last import restriction law created the cheat system, hoarding, profiteering, and bottom power, collectively called Kalabule. Do you remember? He says, the year. I suppose you know who he's talking once he signs off with the year. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is Newsfile.